Hello, good evening, and welcome to the TNT Show. This is 184, i.e. we've done 183 shows before this one. And as usual, we suggest to you that this is your antidote to BBC Scotland. It doesn't have to be a very powerful antidote because that channel seems to be losing viewers by the bucket load. It's also under, of course, enormous pressure because of incompetence and mistakes. It has a new boss from whom pretty much no one has ever heard. And it looks like the same pattern of rather odd choices for their news items is continuing relentlessly and unabashedly. But as usual, we begin every show with a look at the fact that this is a great day for British democracy. And I want to read you the following because when I first read it, I found it incredible. But some of you might not be as surprised, perhaps, as I was. Listen to this. This is a Commons answer to a Commons question. Karen Smith, Minister of State at the Department of Health and Social Care, was asked a question about what happened, what was the cost to the public purse of storing personal protective equipment in China since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic. This is what Karen said. You might want to take a deep breath or maybe a very stiff whiskey before you listen to this. Here goes. At the end of September 2024, said the minister, approximately 1,049,700 pallets, or 23% of personal protective equipment, has been recycled through energy from waste and recycling. Right? You get that. In other words, we threw it away. And because we didn't want to put it in landfill necessarily, we burned some of it. The original cost, please sit down as you listen to this. The original cost to purchase was £8.644 billion. Let me repeat that. £8.644 billion. Billion pounds, right? And all of the stock categorized as excess has no residual market value. In other words, it's all gone. All these billions have just gone. It was never used, right? And it's just gone. Listen to this too. Since the outbreak of the COVID pandemic in 2020, the total cost of storing PPE in China was, and again, you might want to take a seat before you hear this. I'll pause for a second. £60.6 million. Right? Now this is product that never got to the UK. This is product that was made and stayed in China. Right? £60 million. I mean, honestly, you couldn't make it up. You honestly couldn't make it up. If I'd come to you at any stage and said, I'm going to blow billions and I'm also going to spend 60 million on a product that has never left the country of origin and therefore was clearly never used here. Now, one other piece of news, and you might want to, again, hold onto your hat when you hear this. You may be familiar with Jeff Bezos. Now, we're looking further afield here now. I just want to make a very general point about the state of the global economy just for a second, because I think it's worthwhile. Jeff Bezos, who effectively is Amazon, has sold, listen to this, 12.5 billion of Amazon shares recently. Now, Jeff is a private individual. He's entitled to do whatever he can with his own resources. Warren Buffett, who is probably the most preeminent investor in the world, and certainly in the US, has dumped Apple stock. So he has sold Apple, right? Apple stock is riding high just now, but Warren Buffett has dumped it. And he's sitting, listen to this, he's sitting on $325 billion in cash. Now, since the whole purpose of his business, right, Berkshire Hathaway, is actually to make investments and make money for the people who invest in Berkshire Hathaway, the fact that he's sitting on $325 billion would suggest that there's something very, very interesting happening out there in the stock market. I'll put it no stronger than that. Well, let's leave all of these sort of interesting facts about the state of British democracy, coupled with the fact that major oligarchs are dumping stock. And maybe there's something in that, maybe there's absolutely nothing in it. But I think we'd all be advised to be cognizant of some of these rather significant changes. Look, we have a fantastic guest tonight. I'm really excited to be talking to her. We have Anna Arqué from the Catalan countries joining us in a couple of minutes. And she'll be talking, obviously, about the Catalan countries, but a range of other things as well. She has a terribly interesting background. While we have a situation in this country where many of our politicians have never travelled outside at all and have remained contained within the island, she is somebody who's actually experienced life in other countries, so she can speak with some authority, not only in different languages, but about different cultures. And I think that in itself is interesting and really quite different to what we're used to when we think about politicians in this country. So she has an edge on what else happens. She's also has a degree in business administration from the University of Lleida, and she's lived in Lisbon as well as London. So without any further ado, let me introduce Anna Arqué. Welcome, Anna. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me and being a guest in this The Nation Talks. I'm very honored and thank you very much.
Anna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. Well, I'm Catalan. I was born in Lleida, which is an interior town of Catalonia. That is very well known because it's very cold in winter and very hot in the summer. It's a farmer land, basically. And well, I just had a normal upbringing with family I love very much. And then, yeah, as you said, I made the studies in business and marketing, communications, and that brought me to London, in which I lived, where I lived for many years, in different roles. For example, the content director, production manager for communications strategy, business to business, basically. But then I also lived in many other countries like Portugal, which was fantastic, also in Spain, in the south of Spain, and in France or in Nice, and Italy, and Morocco, which also was a great experience. And then I came back to Catalonia, and then I started, definitely my activism in Catalan for independence of Catalonia. And I started with, in Catalonia, there was not that much things going on in terms of independence. You had two political parties, basically, one on the left, one nationalistic on the center right, the other on the left, Esquerra y Convergencia, and not much. But then suddenly there was this movement they were organizing in 2008 when I arrived again in Catalonia. They were organizing a demonstration in Brussels, and so I thought, oh great! So I called them, and they basically said, well, invite me to be in charge of international press and be in the board. I accepted, and from that moment, I basically got more and more and more and more. I had to go back to England, and basically I never did. So I stayed in Catalonia because they were coming the popular referendums, which was a huge turning point for Catalan independence. And from that moment till today, I'm speaking to you. I basically have not really stopped working for the independence. Yeah, I don't know if I'm leaving something, but that's that's
Well,
about it.
you know, and you stood for election, didn't you?
No, well, I've always gave support to new platforms, new ways of understanding politics.
Mm.
And maybe they ask me to close a list or be in a position which actually I have never really had an intention to be elected.
Yeah.
Who knows in the future as things are going? I don't know, but it has never been my intention. So it was just on a support role to say
Okay.
it this way. And one of them, it was actually when the president of Barça, Football Club Barcelona, decided to go ahead in politics, and he asked me to be there to help, and yeah, I did. But no,
So the president of Barca asked you to help him.
Barça.
Did he?
Well, no, not that. Well, put it that way. It sounds too grand. No, 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 no. I mean, yeah, have him in the terms. Well, he's with what it's a long time now, huh? But for what I learned from him, for the things he knows. But politics was a new thing, and I
Mhm.
found him very humble to actually ask opinions. And back that time, we were doing the popular referendums, which it was like the uh, it was huge, and it has been really the turning point of everything. So, and I was in charge of two of the commissions. I was one of the founders of the national coordination, and because I was in the international side and in the communications side, I asked him to actually giving support to this process, and he did, and we kind of get along. He's a patriot, and then basically he was even more famous. More people knew who was Barca president than who was the president of Catalonia. Can you believe that? He was really really relevant and important. So
Yeah.
he basically took the chance and went for politics. And I guess he asked people who knew we were around. I told him I didn't know anything about party politics. I was a social activist, but still, he insisted on be there and explaining him that. So basically, that was why I was there. But
Are you guys still in touch?
not really.
Mm.
But like with many other people, I'm just not a person of keeping agenda. Huh? I mean, I guess when you work with so many people, I know that uh, back in that time he was not just like another person, but
Mm.
after some years of relation and activism, and he basically then stopped politics. As I said always, I'm really happy to meet extraordinary people and to make friends, but my objective is independence.
Yeah.
We're so busy with that we know working for that, so many people that sometimes you just can't keep the agenda, although you know that if the time come, who are the
Yeah.
people to be calling.
That's good. And you've got some quite close connections with Scotland because you were there for the referendum and you were back there
Yeah.
again quite recently. What
Yes.
was your feeling about the referendum back in 2014?
Wow. It was fantastic. Well, so many things about that referendum. Well, first of all, of course, just a note for Alex Salmon, which of course I had the privilege to meet him, and not only meet him, but being able to talk with him for so long. And it's well, it's a very 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 heartbreaking news about it. But for me, of course, it goes together because he was one of the first people that I met, and he was really he was it struck me. Sorry, the point is that back that time in Catalonia when I met Alex Salmon, I met him precisely because we were doing the popular referendum precisely because Catalan politicians were not doing what they should be doing. And Alex Salmond was. So it was like a perfect combination. We had Catalans really organized, doing referendums in 555 municipalities. Before the ANC, we had 60,000 voluntaries, and all that without any help whatsoever from the political parties. It was all grassroots. And so when I went and I met Alex Salmond, he was actually truly interested, which of course for me was like, wow, he is interested, not like in my country. So yeah, and then the building up of the Scottish referendum was really interesting from a political point of view, also to see how Alex Salmond, the SNP, and then all the Yes campaign and all the social movement were doing it so well, and it was really interesting a point here because back then in Catalonia, the president in the Catalan parliament said that we were going to have a referendum, yes or yes, with the question, the Scottish question. That was really important because both countries, which we had good, well, in Catalonia, it was time that we already were having good numbers, a good chance of winning, and Scotland was really doing well. So it was really exciting times. But in Catalonia, politicians started to say that, oh, Scottish can make the referendum because English are so democratic. And Catalans, we can't because Spanish are so mean. They're not democratic. But that was not really true. And because I was with such an intense relationship also with the Scottish Independent Convention, Commonweal, Shona Malcolm, so many names. I kind of knew quite well what was going on. And the battle that the Scottish had to have to actually overcome the English not wanting Scottish to have a referendum. Later, they kind of agreed because it was all a political strategy that you Scots were making, and so you succeed. But in Catalonia, they decided to go the legal way, which is what Nicola Sturgeon did at the end of her mandate. She went also for the legal way. And that was exactly what I was saying to Catalans, saying, no, you're not right. You're just using at that end a cul-de-sac. And they were saying, no, look at the Scots. But now, with time, it has been proven that when the Scots have gone the same path, which is the legal path, you also had a no for an answer. So it's not like England is more democratic than Spain. It's just that each country decided a path. And Alex said there was not, sorry.
Yeah. I think it was a bit easier in Scotland with respect to Catalonia. The reason it was easier in Scotland is the difference between constitution and law. In the UK, there was no
like because they didn't let you. This by the legal the constitution. They said no, that you don't have any, that you don't have any room for that.
The constitution in the UK, they
all say the same.
Well, not quite. The constitution in the UK is unwritten, so it's very difficult for a British government to be categoric about what is constitutional and what isn't. It can always change the constitution at will, which most countries can't do. A government can't change the constitution at will. In the UK, they can, but because the constitution is unwritten, it's much easier for a prime minister to agree with a first minister or anyone else that they're going to have a referendum because it's not unconstitutional. The lawyers will never get involved because the Prime Minister effectively is the Constitution in the UK.
Sure.
In Spain, of course, it's different because somebody's actually written it down and everybody can go and look at it and see what it says. That's not the case in the UK. No, it's not written down anywhere except across a whole range of different places.
But justice and the rights are
Uh,
they
that's
don't.
a
It doesn't
moral. That's
matter what the
yeah,
paper says. So
absolutely.
and we know about that because Catalans, we did had our constitutions and our first parliament in Europe, which is discussed if it was the English or the Catalan, but there's a historical even English historians, they do talk about how Catalan was the first one. That doesn't matter. The point is that so we are in favor of not having a written constitution, but once you have it, we do have to understand that all this, it was just tactics, because at the end of the day, the Spanish constitution can't be a democratic constitution if it doesn't sign all the international treaties, which it did. So the Spanish constitutions, they assume and they agreed to all the human rights, the right to self-determination, and that is there, is written and signed. So it's just an excuse. The same way as when this last time, when Nicola Sturgeon went to the legal path, and English said no. Of course, they can't say no, but they did.
I think
The
that's different.
the point
I
is
think
that
she made I think she made a terrible
politicians,
mistake there.
sorry, the point is that the Catalan politicians and the Scottish politicians agreed to that no, which
Yeah,
that is what Alex Salmond never did. And that's
no,
why he said plan B is plan A.
yeah,
And Catalonia, the politicians, when they were asking Spain to allow us, which they never should be formulated this way, because it's not like they should allow you. You are a nation, so you
yeah,
do have the right. They were saying, if they don't allow us, we do have a plan B. If you have a plan B and you're already saying that, how are they going to allow you? If yourself are saying that you already have a plan B. So anyway, obviously, this momentum that in 2014 end up that the Scottish, you did had a legal binding referendum, although you did have many problems from English, because I remember how Alex Salmond one day he had to answer because they said that the Scotland Act didn't allow to have a
that's true.
referendum. So if we want to go about the legal stuff and what it's written,
I think,
the
yeah,
Scots, the English
yeah,
also have the excuses. But Alex Salmond said, we do have a mandate, we do have a majority in the Parliament of Scotland. So all these are technicalities. We will find a solution because this is about democracy, and that's it.
yeah.
There's
I think you
nothing
make a
else you
good.
can add to it. It
I
was a
think you make a
perfect
good point.
answer.
I think it's. I mean, the definition of some of these words is difficult for a lot of people. Um, I mean, democracy, constitution, the law. Where do all these? What's the nexus of all of that? But uh, uh, I think you're absolutely right when you say if you go and ask the governing entity for permission, then immediately you've put yourself in an inferior position. You've effectively
Absolutely.
accepted their sovereignty and that you will conduct yourself in line with their sovereignty. I think what Salmond did, which was awfully clever, was to persuade the sovereign power to concede sovereignty in order for there to be a referendum in Scotland, which is remarkable. And clearly, it's not a mistake that any of the Westminster politicians would make now. I mean, if they're asked, uh, is this a voluntary union? They say yes. And then the supplementary question is, well, okay, how do we leave it? Or it's too soon to talk about that. So in other words, they've effectively conceded the point. It's really a question of public pressure, I suspect, which I assume will be the case when it comes to the Catalan countries too. There'll have to be some sort of public pressure as well. So tell me, where do things stand in the Catalan countries just now? Because it's very confusing to people outside. I mean, for example, we've had a question here, which you might want to answer before you answer that question. And the question is this. Uh, how did the left and right in the Catalan independence find common ground?
Well, okay. So when the social movement was kind of guiding political parties, kind of they found a common ground that was like getting into the lead. Getting the lead was a common ground. Once they got the lead, we won the referendum, which was publicized as legal and binding. That's why Catalan people put everything onto that. And they also found a common ground to say, oh, we cancel it, and we ask for an open dialogue with Spain and other entities, which obviously
Why?
the
Why did
Catalan
they do
people
that?
were like surprised, and they were like, what we want? What are you talking about? And the Catalan politicians, they all agreed then, didn't matter if they were right or left, that the threat, the violence threat was too much. So they agreed the common ground was to obey the Spanish state instead of obeying the Catalan votes and the Catalan democracy. That was, that is a wound. That is something that I don't know if ever is going to be forgiven, I guess, but not forgotten, because it was really crushing for us. And it was really surprising as well for us that when then they argued about how to proceed, um, so one's decided to go to Spain, and the others decided to go to Waterloo. Then they started to argue. Then, so again, when the independence was already sentenced to not independence, then they started to argue. And the point, and for us, it was really surprising that internationally, the social movements, democratic think tanks, what have you, everybody just closed themselves to only look at what was going on to the politicians in respect the Spanish repression. And we were quite shocked because actually politicians, of course, it's important what happened to them, but they took a decision, and they thought that was the best decision, to cancel independence and for them to their life then to be that. But what about the thousands of Catalans that later on they were repressed, they were charged, they still are with judicial, with legal causes, prison, uh, financial. Some people has their life ruined, and the deceit of a whole movement that gave everything every day for years, and everybody was just clapping the heroes, and that, don't want to take me wrong, it's not like we are resentful to our own politicians, but we kind of not understood what people didn't understood, that there was a whole country there standing up for independence, and nobody talked about that anywhere. And we felt kind of alone in this respect, but it doesn't matter because we were many of us. So yeah, we kept on, but it was something. In my case, it's good because I'm part of a big network, international network, so I could explain to my peers in Scotland, Flanders, Euskal Herria, etc., what was going on. So some people knew about the shock, but all the other, the press was only talking about politicians. So now, what was going on? That after that, they decided to call for elections when the Spanish state, of course, started the machinery, because in Catalonia, not many people believed that Catalan politicians were surprised that the Spanish were going to threat with violence. Excuse me. I mean, we still have a generation alive that was tortured, persecuted by Franco. And before Franco was Primo de Rivera, and before that, and before that. So it's nonsense to say that you couldn't expect Spanish violence. What is amazing is that as politicians, taking your people to a referendum inside the Spanish state about independence, you don't have a plan of contention for when they come. You don't have alliance everywhere, knowing, because all the weeks and months before the referendum, when we were called by international press, BBC or what, from all countries, the States, Australia, everywhere, they were all asking the same question. What are you going to do if Spain comes with violence? So if I was asked that, we are going to imagine that Catalan politicians were not asked the same questions. So of course they knew. And they played full. They played surprise. They played they couldn't imagine. So it was really irresponsible, and it was really treating people as kids, like pretending they could lie to us. So what happened that these last elections, almost 1 million independencies didn't vote. And now what's going on? The Spanish are ruling the Catalan government. And people may think, wow, but why you did that? And yeah, I understand. I was not campaigning for that because there are new political parties, new movements. So I was supporting always vote independence, always never leave an inch to your adversary. But I understand friends of mine were campaigning for abstention. And because at the end of the day, what has happened has been huge in Catalonia. And the political parties were not doing what they were saying they will be doing. So they say, okay, so you don't do it, we take you out. Because you do need to learn to obey the mandates. So they preferred the Spanish to rule Catalonia and to punish Catalan independentist uh, politicians than to once again keep on this hamster story that you always promised, but you never delivered.
And
And this is how
hasn't it actually gone further? The present Spanish government in Madrid relies upon Catalan votes to govern.
exactly. Well, so now maybe people may better understand that how that can be possible if all these political parties and all these politicians are independentists. You block after what they did to us, hitting us, our grandmas, with the kids, the youngsters, all the 4,000 people being prosecuted after all this and our history. How can you do that? You just say, no, guys, we block everything until you don't recognize our right to self-determination. But instead of doing that, they play good people. Like, no, because if we don't give support to this government, the far right will arrive. But that contradicts our narrative because we know, and this is very important to understand, that after Frankism, the same police, the same judges, the same machinery kept working. The only difference is that the dictator was finally dead, but Frankism continued. So it was not like a transition, but a transaction. And the main political parties, PP and PSOE, had big fascist names in their political parties. So how can you agree with them anything? Well, some they did, and now we are still perpetuating this kind of um, business mind that, well, but the point is that if at least they brought something huge for us, like, okay, we agree to give them the government, but we take uh, something like really, I don't know, a referendum, which for me it's already made. But let's say that, but nothing, just promises that they never get accomplished. So the situation in Catalonia is that there's but lots of people that are really orphaned of uh, of knowing who to vote. And if the current political parties have so many votes, although they lose, it's because people don't know, they don't have an alternative, or they don't believe in a new alternative. Why? Because media
But,
play
but
a big role.
doesn't
And of course, all
there
by
is a truth, and I think it's universally acknowledged that there is no such thing as a vacuum. So if political parties are not able or willing to pursue a particular course of action, which popular demand requires, then generally what happens is something fills the vacuum. In other words, they leave a space. And generally what happens is a political entity will arise that fills the space. That's what happens, generally speaking, in democracies.
Yes. But
So that's an
media, it's
opportunity.
important. Huh?
That's an opportunity. If you want, I mean, some people might look at that and say, I'm going to start a new party.
Oh, yes, that has already happened. We have 3 new parties, 3 or 4, and people are gathering to see how to. But it's not a shame that we have lost all these years just because some people in the political
It's,
parties just
and
didn't obey
Anna,
democracy.
it's not unusual.
No,
Historically,
no, but
this is a feature
it's
of all independence movements. They
annoying.
fracture, they fall apart, they come together, and eventually they succeed. Not necessarily in the first iteration, but some way down the line. Takes a while, but generally it
Yes,
works out.
yeah, but we should have already learned some lessons because it's not like it's our first run. This
I know, I know.
we have already a few generations in our back, and it
In
looks
Ireland,
like
it took
we are
six.
very stubborn not to learn.
In Ireland, it took 600 years. So,
Well, yeah, well, let's do it before that then.
so what is your feeling about media influence in the
Yeah.
way Catalans think about independence?
Yeah, well, Catalans, and I would dare to say that everywhere else, huh? Media it's a pillar. They say the fourth power, right? I mean,
Mm,
it's a pillar of should be the pillar of democracy. Free press, it's essential because we need to get informed, and it looks like in these modern days that when there's a big clash being elections or a war or whatever, but even elections, which is not so dramatic, or like an internal war between political parties, press tends to be too black or white. They too control. There's not enough debate, and they say that truth is the first victim, and that really worries me, because when that happens we have lost the battle, because then the ones that are going to win are the ones that control the media, unless like now with the social media and new outlets looks like sometimes debates
yeah.
can be held. So so media like yourself, or in Catalonia, that also there are independent medias where you can be invited and
Mm.
free speak, are essential, are completely essential.
So, if you were to look 5 years ahead, where will the independence movement in the Catalan countries be, in your opinion?
Well, in 5 years, I hope that all these um, shocked uh, feeling, the sad, depressed, sad feeling that so many people in Catalonia live, we will have been able to turn it into again hope and enthusiasm. And I do believe that is going to be the case because we have not lost anybody.
Mm,
Everybody is independentist. What we have to learn is to believe and trust in our own capacities, in our
yeah,
own talent. Because at the end of the day, I mean, politicians, with all my respect, it's not like they're like the wise men of the country. Some of them are pretty wise, but actually, there's lots of them that they're not.
yeah.
And some, not at all. So, I mean, whatever. I mean, the one lesson that we've learned in Catalonia is that in order to get independence, to be independentist, it's good, but actually what we need is to be disposed to be ready, to be disposed to have a fight, and to be disposed to win, to make independence, to to be willing to
Yeah.
make independence. And therefore, I mean, there's so many talented people in all walks of life, incredible, I don't know, business people, teachers, what have you, that can be politicians only to achieve independence. Then after, to rule a government and all this stuff, maybe people are not interested at all, so they
Yeah.
can't go back to their professions. But we need the help of all of us. We need to
Yeah.
trust in ourselves and believe in our capacity.
Well, you've been very articulate tonight, right? You've taken us through somewhat complicated discussions. I have to return to the original question I asked you. Uh, why don't you stand?
Okay. I don't, it's not that, it's not because I have a problem on doing so or not. It's just that I've been working for a long time, and I've always found that there's so great people to actually do it, and I'm good at being in the machinery, organizing, doing things, creating narrative, speeches, all that. So I thought, oh, well, doesn't matter. Now, if a time comes and it happens, like I don't know, I don't have a problem to actually do it. I don't have. It's just like a game. You just play where what's the best position for everybody for the movement that I could
Mm,
be at now, and because there's always good people that and they willing and they want to lead like a political campaign. Uh, Fine. So then sometimes there are other positions and maybe not so many people, and I can fill that gap. But if it comes a day that I need to, it's not that I'm in fear or I'm shy or which I was when I started the movement and I had to go to television or some of these outlets. I remember how bad it was for me. One of the times I completely got blank. I had like I didn't know what was a panic thing of this
mm,
of scenario. I don't know how you call it. And I was completely because I really was. But fine now after 15 years, I mean I've been in and out. So yeah, so if it comes, I will, and I will be very happy to serve my country in that position as I am when I'm doing it in other positions.
yeah. Now, you said earlier that, and this will be of real interest to people watching tonight in particular, that when you had the referendum, and then you got the impression that the politicians didn't have a plan to take the country forward, and that's why they began to entertain discussions with Madrid, etc. I may have that slightly wrong, but it, it seems to me one of the keys in Scotland, particularly, is that the referendum back in 2014 had difficulty because people wanted detail about what shape will the country take, how will it be governed. There's a whole bunch of questions, which the other side never answered, by the way. They just assumed the status quo was okay. And that was I think if the independence movement had gone in with some negative stuff about the status quo, they might conceivably have won it. But they were resolutely positive. Uh, so do you feel that that's still missing in the Catalan countries, a plan going forward, should there be a positive result in a referendum?
I think it's complex. It's different because I wouldn't know probably to pinpoint in Scotland because it's not. Although I love you, I love Scotland very much, and I know quite a lot. I think in regards Catalans, it's always difficult to say about these deep things. But in Catalonia, I must say that we independence movement, there are people from all different ideologies, but lots
Sure.
of them. So it's really plural. So when you start saying how we're going to do a specific, we're going to have a huge discussion that's not going to end up well because we're not going to arrive to a conclusion because so the way we decided is, look, what we want is to be in a position where this debate can be held. and where we can take these decisions. So why don't we worry now to get to that point, explaining the most important thing, and that is that with independence,
Okay.
we set our horizons and our ambitions and our
I
capacity to get everything. But once we get independence, then there will be the elections for the first government. So every ideology could say, we
okay.
want to do this, we want to that,
I
and people
understand.
can
I
vote.
understand. But let
The
me ask you a
summer, I
basic.
think it's a little bit different.
Well, let me ask you a basic question then. Would or would not an independent Catalan countries be a member of the EU?
We'll have to ask. We'll have to have referendums. We will have to have a referendum about that as well. If the electoral manifestos of each political party are not clear about that, then we will have to have a referendum as well. It will be a constituent process of a new
Okay.
state. Well, not new, a restored
State.
state,
Okay.
because we had a state, a restoring our state. And there's going to be different questions that we will, that's so exciting.
But,
That's
but
quality.
okay, let me press you on this a little bit. Would it not be catastrophic for a restored Catalan state not to be a member of the EU?
That Catalans will have to decide. They will have to make a decision. For me, it doesn't matter. For me, the fact that we can decide, the fact
Okay.
that we are free even to do it wrongly, even to fail, it's going to be our failing because Catalans were up to here to suffer the consequence of the Spanish failings, which are every day. Look, the drama and the tragedy that we are living now with Valencia
See,
because of the mismanagement. It's
see,
constant trains. Well,
yeah.
we don't go there because it's too much. We don't stop saying all the things. So we about failings, about having to support the failings of the others. We are like this. So even if we have to support our own failing, that will be good news.
Yeah.
So we will see. Let's have a debate, a good debate with data, with passion, with all what it needs, and then let's decide. And whatever we decide, I will be happy with, and we will make the best of the outcome. That whoever is in the front making the speeches gets to convince people.
And don't you think it would be a problem convincing people? And I'll say this one last time and we'll leave it,
Yes.
that some people might be alarmed if they thought because the original power in the EU, original state, as far as the EU is concerned, would be Spain, and Spain would have a veto over any new membership anywhere.
Well,
So
we
if
don't
they
know.
chose,
Well, we don't know about that. Depends how we play the cards. There's a lot of alliances to be made in the world. Oh, who knows? At the moment, absolutely. They will say that up to the last minute. Of course, they will say that. And that's politics. You do have to do your side, whatever it takes to do in your side. So they will play their cards,
but
and then we will play ours.
you know your fellow countrymen and countrywomen better than any of us watching tonight. How do you think they would react to that sort of threat?
At the moment, I mean, for sure, the 3 million independencies, they're not going to take it in account. I mean, we know about the fear campaign. I hope Scots will not either next time with the third option and these things. I mean, that's lessons learned. No, I
Yeah,
don't think for the thing is with the other fellows, the other Catalans, which they doubt. Well, that's something that obviously we do need to think how we're gonna face it. But I'm sure everybody that lives in Catalonia, they already know what's going on and which are the tricks. And yeah, but that's why some of these questions are not currently being discussed
yeah,
because first of all is to get to the point in which you can make these decisions,
yeah.
and that is a good thing, is a benefit for all of us, being independentists or not.
You were in Scotland recently. What was your
Yeah.
reaction to the mood there? What was your take on what's happening there?
Well, it's kind of not fair because when I come to Scotland, I always come with such a great group of people, and we were like representative from so many nations. So for us, it was a
Mm,
celebration. It was a party. It was a really really good time. So I can say, but for what I ask, well, this it's very similar to Catalonia in the sense of people feeling how to start things again. It's like, and this is from ICEC when we started, we had to work. So in each of our countries, we got a majority to make independence.
mm,
We got that. We got the majorities. Scotland had a huge, fantastic referendum that you lost for a little bit, but there was a great thing, the percentage you got
mm,
anyway. But Catalonia and Flanders and Euskal Herria and there's other nations that they had the majorities, and nothing really has happened in terms of practical, real terms. So we all feel like we need to restart again. And now the question is which arguments we need to update because now some things are not valid
yeah.
because we have already had majorities and nothing happened. So in Catalonia, some arguments are not valid. It's not enough to be a majority, for example. It's funny, huh? But so we need to update and decide. And also, something that is really important is how we're going to work all of us together. So when one of us is in a situation that maybe it requires some pressure from other fellow movements,
Hmm.
it's an effective pressure. So
Yeah.
we can't have again that the one politician or two or three or four or whatever the group of them, it's always going to be a handful of them, decide for a whole country that no, now we cancel independence. In which the what? So maybe if we had huge all the network backing the people of Catalonia, they would convince our politicians to say, no, you can't back, you can't back, huh? I mean, as Alex Salmon said, you can't bring people to the top of the mountain and then let them fall down here.
Mm.
You can't. So maybe also we have to work out how it can be useful for the other nations and work out solidarity, but pragmatic, but efficient. So because all of us together, we're millions. We are millions of independentists in Europe. If you count the millions in Catalonia and Scotland, we are millions. And there's obviously a majority of Democrats in Europe. So we need to work better and farther. I said we already do that, but we need to do it more with more people, with the help of more people, and I think that's a good goal
Mm.
for us.
Yeah.
Huh?
Do you think the election of President Trump to be will be an asset for the Catalan countries or not?
Well, reality is funny because both presidents, Clinton and Trump, they made positive comments about Catalonia. It is about time that Catalan politicians go and knock to the door and say, "Hi, guys, so this is us." Well, um, but be apart side to that, to each particular country, um, I guess our early days to say. So far, I mean, what is true is that Trump's victory, I don't really understand why it comes from such a surprise in Europe, because my peers in the States, my friends and contacts there, I mean, it was for months and weeks that it was pretty clear with good polls that that was coming. So again, this surprising thing, well, it was a surprise for me, is that, for example, top politicians from England, like the president or foreign affairs from England, they 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 used a different diplomacy tactic, and they really went to insult the candidate Trump. And you don't need to be a Trumpist to actually find that strange. For myself, for example, I remember the first weeks I was living in London, and I was like in the supermarket, and I was like surprised. I thought something wrong happened, like somebody poured me a soup or something. Because suddenly I was like, sorry. So what's going on? And I learned that an English person, if it comes closer to a meter from you, it says sorry.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that diplomacy, we have gone from that diplomacy, which struck me amazing,
Yeah.
which is really useful, huh? And I did like it, to now that foreign affairs minister starts calling really amazing things to a former president, so and a candidate. So what, for all this election or in the states, that for me was a cultural referendum.
Yeah.
I think in the States, more than voting for Harris dash Clinton dash Obama, and the other side was Trump dash um, Kennedy dash Musk, they actually represent a cultural referendum. And that is really tied to either you accept or not Agenda 2030. And with Agenda 2030, what it really worries me is that I don't know in Scotland, but in Catalonia, and I know other countries in Europe, we have had no debate whatsoever. And we need to see that in the UN resolution, because all this, as we know, agenda comes from the UN, and it says very clearly that the Agenda 2030, it needs to be assumed as a whole. So the goals, the 169 tasks, but also the procedures. And obviously in the States, the goals, the tasks, and the procedures were played in a way that they were completely refused. And the problem that I find is that in Catalonia, you see everybody in line with the Agenda 2030, and I've still not heard one person disagreeing, not a bit. Not in television, there's no public debate. So we have all the trade unions, all the politicians, all the cultural actors, everybody, nobody, left, right, liberals, nobody has an argued critic to the agenda. This just can't be good. Even if I like the agenda, even if I like this, the fact that nobody criticizes, I think for me, bad news. And that shows the state of journalism these days. You can't have an agenda that says what it says about transgender policies, about agricultural policies, about education, so many things, but so many huge changes without actually having a proper debate. So they need to accept everything. It's not like other resolutions. You can say, okay, I like and I agree with the
So,
goals, because
so,
actually they're very utopical. We've,
so
we've finished
you're
poverty.
you're rather happy
But
that you're rather happy that Harris lost.
I was very worried that Agenda 2030 was assumed by such a huge player as a state,
Okay,
as the states, without having
a debate.
proper debates.
Uh,
That
Anna,
I didn't like.
we've almost run out of time.
Uh,
This has been great. It's been absolutely super because sometimes when I do these shows, I have to encourage the other person to speak and speak up. And I didn't have that difficulty tonight because you've been
yeah.
eloquent and you've been intelligent, and you've been charming. So I appreciate that very much indeed.
Okay, well, John, can I call you sometimes out of the cameras if I have a bad day?
If you can stick around for a couple of minutes after we go offline, we perhaps have a quick chat. Well, there we are, folks. Another entertaining show with another fantastic guest, as we always do on this show. Do tell your friends, because it's important to spread the word. As Anna has so eloquently said, this is about social media. It's about, dare I say it, citizen journalism. It's about not relying upon the mainstream, which is frankly going bankrupt anyway, and to appreciate what you've got here, because we appreciate you, the audience. I hope you appreciate us here. And one way to show your appreciation is to support our crowdfunder 2024. We're at 54%. We've got a ways to go. And you can make that difference. You can bridge the gap between where we are now and where we need to get to. And every single penny, every single sou, every single euro, every single dollar you send us, every single pound goes to supporting this media. This media, the media that you tell us in comments that you like. Well, all we're asking you to do is to underscore that affection with a little bit of hard cash. Many of you have already done so. We appreciate that. But please do tell your friends about the show. They're very welcome to join us 7 o'clock every Wednesday. But it's even better if some of you can actually contribute to the financing of it. Thank you again. Good night. Stay safe. Look after each other.
Thank you.
See you next Wednesday.
Thank you.